Good evening and welcome to the ITV News London debates. We're live at Union Chapel in Islington. 2 weeks today, you will head to the polls to decide who will be London's next mayor. So tonight, the four main candidates are with us to debate some of the issues that matter most to you, like crime, housing, the environment and transport. We've got Sadiq Khan for Labour, LUISA PORRITT for the Liberal Democrats, Sean Bailey for the Conservatives and SIAN BERRY for the Greens. Just so the candidates and you at home know, we're going to try and get through as many questions as possible, as many subjects as possible, and make sure that all the candidates get a fair amount of time to speak. So, guys, please do try and keep your answers short, to the point, as much as possible, or I will have to stop you mid-flow and move on to somebody else. Londoners want to get the facts they need to make their choice, and that's the point of the next half an hour. Now, this has been delayed by a year, as we know, because, of course, we've been going through a pandemic because of COVID. So let's just start there, because I guess what Londoners really want to know is what your plans are for the pandemic recovery. Sadiq, what's your plan?
Well, firstly, I've got to begin by saying my thoughts and prayers are with the 18,000 London families who are still grieving the loss of their loved ones. Two big things over the last year that causes me sorrow. One is the loss of those 18,000 lives, but also we've lost 300,000 jobs in our city because of the pandemic. Yeah. The key thing is to have a plan for the recovery. Yeah. So I've got a plan that's focused on jobs, focusing on the green economy, with 4 separate academies, one for the green sector, one creative, one tech, one health and social care, to avoid a return to the mass unemployment we saw in the 1980s. OK, we've got 30 seconds. You were actually bang on, Sadiq. Well done. Sean, how about you?
I think the first thing you have to do is avoid the mistakes made in the past. The mayor was absent at the beginning of the pandemic. He said so himself. So what we need to do is make sure we have proper leadership. We need to be driven by the data so that we can reopen London. We've had a lot of support from the government, but ultimately the business in London needs support. We need customers in there. That's the key thing. That's what will give us back our economy. And of course, we must stick to the rules in order to keep the population of London safe.
How about you, Louisa?
Well, it's been an absolutely devastating year for Londoners. So many lives lost, jobs lost. It's been hard being apart from people that we love and would normally spend time with, but we need to look to the future now, and that's what I'm offering. And I'm the only candidate in this race who's looking at the opportunities and embracing the changes that have been accelerated as a result of the pandemic. Things like the rise of online shopping and the fact that more people are going to be working from home than ever before. So I would see some of those opportunities to do things like converting some of the empty office space.
We'll get to housing in just a sec, so I'll stop you just there. But Sean, how about you?
After the year we've had, people are crying out for a new start, and Greens are offering that, a real green recovery where we work together to build a secure future. And that does mean investing in green jobs and new industries, but it also means investing directly in our people as well. I'm the only candidate putting forward plans for a basic income to help kickstart new young careers and new businesses as well. We'll only get a real green recovery if we have a green mayor planning it.
That's brilliant, Sean. Thanks very much. And guys, you guys have kept to time, so it feels as though we'll get through quite a few subjects today, which is absolutely brilliant. But we're going to kick off with one of the things that within our poll, Londoners said they were most concerned about, and that is crime. Sean, you used the number 100 quite a lot through your manifesto, and you said you want to cut crime in 100 days. So how do you plan on doing that?
I think, look, I'll get 8,000 extra police officers on the streets of London. I'll reopen the 38 police stations closed by Sadiq Khan. But the most important thing as well, I'll have 4,000 youth workers across London to help our young people grow and have safe spaces. And also I'll start a second chance fund. 22 years of youth work shows you can't arrest your way out of this problem. We do have some young people who need a fresh start. They need support to move in the right direction.
But Sadiq Khan's been trying for ages to get more police on the streets and get more funding for that. So how do you think you'll be able to do that?
Well, the first thing is the mayor removed £38 million from the police staffing budget as his first act of being mayor, and that reduced his numbers straight away. What I will do is focus the savings in City Hall on putting police officers on the streets of London.
Louisa, your thing is proper community policing. What exactly does that mean?
That means having neighbourhoods officers who are attached to individual areas all around London again. In the past, the police had full-strength teams, which meant that they could do things like investigating burglaries, that they could proactively prevent crime. We know that people feel safer and are safer when there's a visible police presence in their neighbourhoods. So I would double the number of officers. It also means that they are more trusted by the communities that they serve. And we've seen trust has fallen between the Metropolitan Police and local communities. So I would seek to restore that.
But getting more community police officers on the street doesn't really deal with the issue of technology. The Met Police has often talked about the fact they need more investment within new technology, because for a lot of crimes that happen within London, that's the way that they are committed, and that's where the stream comes from.
Well, technology isn't the answer to everything. Actually, that human contact is so important for the police to be able to do their jobs effectively. Police knowing people in their local areas, that means they can gather intelligence to help them solve and prevent crimes. So it's not a panacea, I'm afraid. Things like the rollout of facial recognition technology, I've actually opposed that because it's not very effective for policing.
Now, Sadiq, crime has gone up 6% in your tenure. If we take out 2020, because quite frankly, we're all in our homes, it's gone up by 18%. So what can you say to London to trust them that you bring that down again if you get back in?
Well, both as a Member of Parliament and as the Mayor, I meet bereaved families regularly, and the causes of crime are quite complex. Deprivation, alienation, lack of opportunity are all factors. No, I'm not excusing crime, but they're factors. And what doesn't help is 11 years of austerity. Police officer numbers being cut, youth services being closed down, public services being cut. So for the last 5 years, we've been both tough on crime, 1,000 additional police officers, but tough on the causes of crime, supporting young Londoners. Only today, I was out at Hackney Wick Football Club, speaking
You're on a bike.
speaking to great mentors like Bobby, coaches, working with young people, giving them constructive things to do. And you know what? Youth violence has gone down, violent knife injury under 25 has gone down, moped-enabled crime has gone down, burglary's gone down, homicide's gone down, gun crime's gone down. We've laid the foundations. Why would you jeopardise it by giving the keys to the person who crashed the car in the first place, the youth and crime advisor, to David Cameron and George Osborne 11 years ago?
Well, there are other candidates here, Sadiq.
I mean, you can argue about those numbers, but the 2020 numbers do skew your overall number. But I'll just...
Well, let's talk about it if you want to.
No. We're going to move on to Sean. We're going to move on to Sean.
I'm glad you accept my point, Charlene.
We'll move on to you, Sean, because you're looking at it slightly differently, aren't you? Because looking at a public health approach when it comes to things like drugs, which tends to be a reason behind a fair amount of the crime within London.
That's right, and the number I'm talking about here is 0. I've set a target to achieve 0 murders in London within 10 years, and that's about a transformation in our attitudes, because as soon as you look at it from that perspective, you have to focus on prevention. There's no way you can enforce yourself to that target. And I think I'm very proud to be from the only party that's opposed austerity from the start, because the services that would really prevent murders, that could help people to get help at the time that makes a difference, help people to get escape from a dangerous home, help people to get support at a young age when they might be about to get into trouble. Those things have been ground down by austerity, and it should never have happened. We need to build up resilience and invest in real prevention to achieve this target.
Very quickly, it's Stephen Lawrence Day today, and I know that you've brought up things like trust within some communities and the police. So very quickly, how would you intend, Sean, to be able to deal with things like that lack of trust between some communities and the Metropolitan Police? Very quickly.
When I was a youth worker, I spent all my time working with the police trying to bridge that gap. You need to bring the community in and say to police, I'm a critical friend, but this community has a point and you must listen, you must make that change. And of course, the challenge for the community is many more people who can make the police more diverse to join as well. So I'll be welcoming as many people as I can into that police service.
Very briefly, Sadiq.
We've got to invest in our police, not cut services to the public like the police and youth services. We've got an action plan. We spent last summer, after the traumatic murder of George Floyd, listening to black Londoners about what they wanted to see. A number of things. Better scrutiny of the police, how the police are policed. We have had the biggest rollout since I've been mayor of body-worn video, so we can now look at the interaction between the police and members of the public. We've also set a target. We have the largest number of black officers we've ever had. We want to increase that even further. We want to have 40% of new recruits by next year being from black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds.
I said very quickly, Sadiq. LUISA.
Well, I'm afraid that Sadiq is not going to reach that target, that 40% target, because he's only got to 3.3%. So how are we going to get to that point by next year?
LUISA,
well, I think that a lot needs to be done to restore trust. And actually part of the reason why recruitment isn't working is that a lot of people from Black, Asian and ethnic minority communities feel the police is not for them. What I would do is reform stop and search.
Okay.
And I would scrap suspicionless stop and search, because we know that it's ethnic minority Londoners who are more likely to be stopped under those blanket powers. And that really
LUISA, I'm going to have to stop you very quickly, Sian.
We haven't learned the lessons from the Stephen Lawrence case. I work on the London Assembly in the Police and Crime Committee, and every time I look at the data, it shows that the police are using force disproportionately against ethnic minorities, that too many families don't get the justice they deserve. We have to have a massive conversation about the purpose of policing, the principles of policing by consent to restore that trust and to change how policing is done. We can't be complacent about this. Not enough has changed.
I'm going to stop you, Sian. Now, in the normal world, we would have an audience here and be able to ask you questions. Of course, we're not able to do that because we're currently living in restrictions. So we've gotten some members of the public to send questions in that they would like you to answer. So the first person is Sace Holmes-Lewis, who mentors ethnic minorities within London and issues they face in education and society. Let's take a look.
What will you do to reduce crime in London? Would there be ring-fence funding for young people in education, youth services and early intervention? What will you do?
LUISA.
Well, I would set up a London youth service to coordinate after-school activities for young people so that they have something else to do to stop vulnerable young people being preyed on by criminal gangs and brought into a life of crime. I would also set up a London apprenticeships hub to make sure that young people have the work opportunities that they need to kickstart their careers. OK, Sian.
In the London Assembly for the past 5 years, I've worked relentlessly to get funding for youth services. I've exposed that more than half of the funding for youth services has been cut in the last 10 years. And Sadiq Khan, the current mayor, actually listened to that. He took the evidence that I gave him, the proposals that I was making for filling some of those gaps from City Hall, and he put some money in. We've seen £70 million go back into youth services. Now, it's not enough. It's about a third of what has been cut. We are still 100 youth centres down in London. Sean wants to put in 32 more. That doesn't make up for the cuts that have been driven by the cuts to councils made by his government.
Well, Sean, step in.
A real new start and a green man who's properly committed to our young people.
I'm going to ring-fence £450 million for youth services across London. The money's there. It's sat in TfL's bank account on unclaimed Oyster cards. But what better way to spend that money than giving the young people of London a future? That's where my 4,000 youth workers will come from. That's where my support for umpteen different youth services across London will come from. The money is there. It's about choices. Different choices been made by the current mayor. I will make a much bigger, more positive choice.
Your party supported the cuts. How can we trust you to be any...
Sian, it's Sadiq's turn. I could hear you laughing in my ear there as Sean was talking.
Well, Sian is accurate. She's been an ally on the Assembly against Sean Bailey and the Tories' policies of austerity for the last 5 years. He's trying to rewrite history. Look, I've met Sace and other mentors who've been inspirational. So we're promising, if I'm re-elected, that every young Londoner will have access to a mentor and good quality youth services should I be re-elected, building on the work that I've done with the help of the Greens on the Assembly. So we've got a £70 million Young Londoners Fund plus a £20 million Violence Reduction Unit. And you saw today the difference that our programmes like Sports Unites make. Sports, education, culture are ways of diverting young people away from criminality to constructive things, but also them having their potential fulfilled. OK, we're going to try and do a quick fire round so we can do housing. I apologise, Sean, because we are trying to get through as many subjects as possible. This, of course, is about Londoners wanting to make their decision. So let's move on to housing. Sadiq, we did a recent investigation looking at some of the awful situations in which some Londoners are living in social housing. One thing that a lot of councils talked about was the fact there's a lack of available housing for them to choose from. Your London plan back in 2017, I believe, said there needs to be a minimum of 49,000 homes built every year. We're nowhere near that, are we? No, we're not. And successive governments have let down our city. Look, this is personal to me. I was raised on a council estate and saw the difference an affordable rent and security of tenure had. But here's the good news. Last year, we began building more council homes than any year since 1983. Last year, we also began building more homes with a social rent, 7,000 in the entire 8 years of Boris Johnson being mayor. The last year he was mayor, only 3 began. We began more than 7,000 last year. And let me show you some more good news, Charlene. 3 years ago, we began building 12,500 affordable homes. The next year, 14,500. Last year, 17,000. We're breaking records every year.
But we still didn't reach what your own manifesto was looking at last time round. But let's move on to
the London plan, Charlene, not the manifesto.
the London plan. So, Sian, your idea is a rent-freeze idea, but the reality is that's not within your power if you become mayor. It's just not, is it?
I mean, polling shows that people don't think the current mayor is doing enough on housing. And I do agree. It did take me 3 years of pestering in the London Assembly to get him even talking about rent controls.
But you can't do rent-freeze,
I'm a private renter. I understand the urgency of sorting this out. And I would work with Londoners and with mayors from other cities to win the powers from government that we need to solve our housing crisis. This is so important because a decent, secure home is a human right. I understand this. I will fight until we get the powers that we need.
LUISA, interesting idea from you to convert office space into homes for people in central London. How exactly would that work?
Well, I think what we need is a change of approach, because you've heard it here today. What's been happening so far hasn't been working. We can't have more of the same. The current mayor has only started half of the affordable homes that he promised back in 2016, despite record grants from the government to deliver housing. So we need a change of approach. And I think we've got an amazing opportunity in front of us with all this empty office space coming onto the market to convert some of that into quality, affordable homes for Londoners. They've done it in Rotterdam already, so we can do it here too. And I don't know why the mayor hasn't looked at that or even made an assessment of this opportunity.
Well, can I say...
I apologise. I just want to be able to get Sean within this, because it's that brilliant 100 number comes in your manifesto where this is concerned.
The only number he knows, Charlene.
You said that you want to build 100,000 homes in London that cost £100,000 for buyers. So that's shared ownership, obviously. So they need a £5,000 deposit, and rent, I guess, would be about £1,000 a month. So how would Londoners be able to achieve this? Is this really an affordable option?
So to be clear, 100,000 homes, £100,000 is exactly what Londoners need. When I speak to Londoners, 87% of them want to rent. And imagine for a second, you're watching this programme now. I could be the way you don't have to deal with that dodgy landlord. Of course it's affordable. We have the money put there. The biggest failing we've seen in London, where we need the big fresh start, is in housing. The mayor promised 80,000 homes per year. He hasn't built 40,000 homes.
So how can you do 100,000?
Because I will...
In 100 days. In 100 days.
What he has done is rely on big developers. I will start a developer in City Hall, run by me, backed by me, and to deliver. The mayor has failed to deliver on housing, and we've seen the results of it across London.
Who's going to be able to afford your homes?
Yeah, £5,000 is the deposit required. Who's got that?
How many Londoners pay significantly more than that in rent? In more than £1,000 in rent?
I'm sure that...
How do you save that while paying those rents?
Thousands of them. I will give people in London the ability to own.
Well, we're going to continue talking about housing, and we've got another question from a member of the public, and that's from Zoe Dainton, who's a Grenfell Tower survivor. Let's take a look.
What will you do as mayor to ensure that everyone in social housing lives in a safe home? For example, before you grant any funding for planning permissions, will tenants be given the opportunity to see and agree fire safety plans?
Sean.
This is so important. The power balance in housing is completely wrong. This is true in private renting, but it's also true in social housing. When you listen to people in social housing, they feel patronised. Councils across London are making plans to knock down their homes and replace them with new ones, and they're not giving them the say. They're not giving them the power to come up with those plans themselves. And when things go wrong, as we saw in Croydon recently, tenants are not able to raise these problems and get them solved. My ideas for London are to give social tenants real power. Yeah. We won the power. We won ballots from the current mayor after a very long campaign, after the first draft of his estate guidance said ballots were too binary. We won that. But we need to go a lot further than that. Tenants need real control over their homes, and this is so important.
Sadiq.
Well, I spent a lot of time in Grenfell. I was there last week with the community, and I want to thank Zoe for her question. We have 8,000 tall buildings in London, and some of them are still death traps. because the government has failed to take action. In City Hall, what we're doing is any new building must have a proper fire safety plan, must have a proper fire lift, but also must have sprinklers in place. We're also supporting those councils and housing associations to remediate those dangerous buildings. Frankly speaking, though, we can't do it without government support.
Okay.
And what we're doing is lobbying the government to give more support so these death traps can become safe.
OK, Louisa, how about you?
Well, it's an absolute scandal that still, all these years after Grenfell happened, there are thousands of Londoners trapped in unsafe homes.
So what would you do, Louisa?
So I would use the existing powers of the mayor to set up a fire risk register. That's something that Sadiq Khan could do right now, and that's what the Liberal Democrats on the London Assembly have been pushing for. I would also ban working with any developers who haven't currently addressed problems in their housing stock.
All right, and finally you, Sean.
First, you've got to make sure that any building built has a proper fire safety plan. The idea that you put people in a building that 3 or 4 years down the line will be a death trap has to be stopped. Secondly, for leaseholders in particular, we have to force the government to give significantly more financial support.
Why don't you ask them then?
I will do. People's lives are in limbo because they can't sell, they can't pay for working mortgages. Yeah. The government are going to have to step in and back.
This is a scandal caused by the current government. How can we trust you to be any different?
Sean, we are going to have to move on because we're going to be talking about air quality. We're trying to give them as much information as possible, our viewers, tonight. So we're going to hear from Anjali Rahman Middleton, who is a friend of Ella Adukisi Deborah, the 9-year-old from South London who died following an asthma attack. Yesterday, of course, the coroner said there should be tougher, legally binding targets on air quality levels.
What are your plans to stop students breathing illegal air pollution levels on their way to school? For example, Adukisi Deborah, who attended school near here, suffered a fatal asthma attack because of pollution levels on her commute.
Louisa.
Well, this is a public health crisis. COVID-19 isn't the only silent killer on our streets, so tackling our poor air quality in London absolutely has to be a priority for the next mayor, and I would make it a top priority. We need to address both transport and housing in London and play our part in tackling the climate emergency. So I would scrap Sadiq Khan's £2 billion polluting Silvertown Tunnel for a start, which is only going to make our toxic air in London worse. Mm-hmm. It's the wrong direction to be going in if we're serious about cleaning up our air. I would introduce a fairer pay-as-you-go road pricing scheme to make sure that we are doing this in a fair way, but also encouraging Londoners to make greener choices and making it easier to do that by making the Santander bike scheme free every Sunday, for example.
Sean.
I think Anjali and the Choked Up campaigners are making an incredibly important point that everybody who lives on main roads throughout London needs to be protected from the incredible dangers of air pollution. And I think the Greens are the only ones you can trust on this. I've been working on this for about 20 years now, and my plans, and I can't understand why the current mayor's plans for an ultra-low emission zone are only going to the North and South Circular. Adukisi Deborah lived near the South Circular, but the new ultra-low emission zone won't prevent traffic on there. So we need something that covers all of London. We need a big ultra-low emission zone, and then we need smarter, fairer ways of doing road charging, which the Greens and the Lib Dems are agreed on in the Assembly. But the current mayor has not even done a report or a study on in the entire time that he's been there, despite me pestering him for more than 5 years. This is a missing part of our plans, and I would set a zero carbon target and a zero emissions target for London that we'll achieve by 2030.
OK, Sean.
Using the mayor's powers alone.
Sean?
I think the real mistake that's been made here, the opportunity missed, we keep talking about taxing people, making them pay more. What we should be doing is greening the entire bus fleet. That will be the equivalent of taking 1.1 million cars off the road. I'll also give the black taxi cab industry a £6,000 interest-free loan to speed up the adoption of the black cabs. Again, the new black cabs are zero emissions. Again, that takes an additional 1.1 million cars off of the roads from a point of emissions. We've got to attack the source, not attack Londoners' wallets.
It's interesting because you also talk about those low traffic neighbourhood schemes, and you said that you would suspend them when you come in. that's not within your power, though, is it?
Well, we provide the money for them. TfL has a look at those
The government, provides
the money goes through TfL.
No.
The money goes through TfL. TfL have a stake in which schemes are developed, where they're developed, and how they put in. And somebody, because the current mayor will not, has to advocate for people. He was brought to court, he lost, and he's gone back again.
Well,
we need to help people stand up to their local councils.
A factual point is that the government gave the money to local councils. The local councils decided how they would decide to spend it in terms of those low traffic neighbourhood schemes. And Sadiq, it's interesting because LUISA did bring up the Silvertown tunnel just then. How can you sort of want to be the green mayor, the greener choice for mayor, if you're doing things like building a tunnel that's going to require cars?
Shall I answer the question first I was asked, then I'll answer the second one. So I helped Rosamond and the lawyers get a new inquest because I was concerned that Ella's death was caused by the poor quality air as a consequence of the previous mayor's policies, by the way. I think there's an issue of social justice. And over the last 5 years, because of my policies, we've reduced the toxic air in the centre of London by a half, around the rest of London by a third. All our buses are ULEZ compliant. We have the world's first ultra emission zone. We've increased 5-fold the number of safe cycling. We have safer streets. We're encouraging more people to walk and cycle. And that's led to the King's College saying, with my policies, the air becomes legal within 6 years. With the previous mayor's policies, 193 years.
So Silvertown Tunnel, how does that make sense?
The status quo is not working. The Blackwall Tunnel, which is the only way to get across, is closed on average 700 times a year. The most unreliable bus in London is a single-decker bus that goes through that tunnel, but for every 5-minute closure, there's a 3-mile tailback. So my solution is to have one tunnel that's, with a lane reserved for buses, double-decker buses, more than 30 in an hour. Pedestrians and cyclists can go.
Argument. If you build a new road, there'll be more cars on the road.
Well, more cars on the road. But listen, we've only got I know, but we've only got a couple of minutes, I'm afraid. So I said you've got to get to the point at the start of your answer, and then you can get everything.
Charlie, these are complex problems.
I get that. We have half an hour to cover a lot of complex issues that Londoners need to know about. So we're trying to get through as much as possible, and that is rather important. Because we've only got 2 minutes left. Sadiq, I'm afraid I am going to have to stop you there because we're going to get to our final answer, and I'm literally going to have to get like 20 seconds out of you. What would be your greatest post-lockdown treat in London? Very quickly, Sean.
My greatest treat? Seeing my friends again at the pub, because I still haven't had time to go.
How about you, Sean?
Getting over to my mum's cooking.
Sadiq.
Can't wait to... Listen, I've not been clubbing for 25 years. I'm going clubbing on the first Saturday after June 21st.
You might be able to join Sean
proper centrist dad, embarrassing dad dancing.
How about you, Louisa?
Well, I have managed to go to the pub a couple of times already off the campaign trail, but definitely seeing my friends once the campaign is over, because I've been with colleagues a lot recently.
They're not that bad.
No, I love my Lib Dem colleagues, of course, but it'd be nice to see some of my friends from outside of work.
Oh, indeed. I'm sure that none of you wants to be the first person you each have a pint with after this election. Well, look, guys, thank you so much for joining us. You coped with those quick fire answers really, really well, so thank you. Look, that's all we have time for of the ITV News London mayor election debate. A full list of all the candidates running for mayor on May the 6th is on screen now. It's also on our website, just search for ITV London. The weather's next, but from everybody here at Union Chapel and all the candidates, please do enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Making the most of it, whatever the weather. Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. I hope you're keeping well and enjoyed the sunshine today. My goodness, there was plenty of it, wasn't there, across the capital and beyond. And a dreamy day for Maz because she finally got a robin to feed off her hand. Lucky her. So, if you enjoyed the sunshine, you'll enjoy tomorrow because we've got plenty more of it. Dry and sunny. It's going to feel a little bit warmer tomorrow in that sunshine. Still a bit cooler to the east though, and we have got cold nights on the card still. Here's what's going on if you're interested. We've got high pressure firmly in charge. The isobars quite far apart, so those winds light. Bit more cloud this weekend, but nothing too bothersome. It's really not until Monday night we'll see this system just sink south, but it doesn't like it'll bring us too much bother at the moment, although we are after some rain. And just to note that we have got high UV at the moment, the sun pretty much as strong as it is in August, and I'm afraid for those hay fever sufferers, high pollen tomorrow as well. So back to the detail for tonight. Clear skies out there, so a bit like last night, those temperatures will drop down and there may well be some pockets of frost first thing tomorrow morning. In the towns and cities, those temperatures should stay above freezing, but it may well get below freezing out in some of those little rural pockets. But to go with that cold start, we have plenty of sunshine, so any frost will melt away very quickly. Lovely blue skies once again and light winds. The temperature should get a little bit warmer tomorrow, climbing up to highs of 17, maybe 18 degrees, but again, it is a bit cooler in the east with that sea breeze. The evening's looking very pleasant again, and then we're looking at another chilly night on Friday into Saturday, and there'll be a bit more cloud around, as you can see, over the weekend, and those temperatures just starting to edge away as well. That's it for now. I'll see you later on. Cheerio.
Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.